All right, good afternoon, everybody. So this is the review that's going to be for our midterm, okay? So I gave you guys this in class. Everybody has a copy because everybody has showed up over the last 2 days. So I did this in class. I know most of you paid attention, but some of you wanted a study guide as we go through. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly just to give you the process and setup, okay? If you see a problem like this, what should you do or how should you handle it? That's the situation you need to go through as we do these, okay? So first and foremost, if you see an equation set up where it's asking you to do this and you see your answer like this, most likely, ladies and gentlemen, the only way to answer this is to use the box method, okay? Or distribute doing the FOIL method that some of you do. So I'm going to use the box because it's easier to do this setup, all right, 4. So negative 2x, multiply these together. This is an x, by the way. You would get 6x squared y. So right away, being multiple choice, you know that it's either C or D, and then everything is the same except for the end, so it's plus 6x. Answer's D. Number 2, same thing, okay? You could distribute it out. So if I FOIL this out, it would be 2x squared, and then it's going to be plus 5x minus 8x, and then it's minus 20, okay? Combine like terms. Combine like terms, and you would end up with this setup here, which is going to end up being not B, buddy, D. All right, and being minus 20, know that the setup, you would eliminate B right away, go from there. Okay, so simple setups. If you guys struggle with it, let me know, but that's kind of the same thing. Adding. So these are just combining. So as we had talked about before about combining like terms, okay? You guys don't look at this and say, oh, I'm adding two of these numbers together. No, you're not. Okay, it's a 3 minus and a negative 2. So if you have a 3 and a negative 2, how are you putting those together? Are you adding them or are you subtracting them? Well, this is the same thing as if I write plus 3. So if I said 3 minus 2, I'd get one answer. And if I said negative 2 plus 3, I'd get the other answer. It's the same thing. They all equal negative 1. Okay, but it's how you see it in your mind's eye. Do you see it 3 minus 2 or do you see it negative 2 plus 3? That's one thing you guys need to get through and understand, okay? So on this one, the answer is going to be 1. Sorry, my bad. All right, so if it's x squared, you know you're going to eliminate these two, and then your answer is going to end up being B. Okay, so remember, negative 2 plus 3 is a positive 1. And then 3 minus 2 would be a positive 1. They're the same thing, but how do you think about it? Okay. This setup. So I'm just going to do the setup on this one. It's going to be x and 5, and then it's going to be x squared minus 2x and a 9. So if I multiply these last two terms together, I get a 45. So that means this one's gone. The first terms would be x to the third. And then if I multiply these out, so this is going to be negative 2x squared, and then this is going to be 5x squared. And so your answer is going to end up being 3 minus 2, which is a positive 3. So that eliminates A. And then what's left when you guys multiply these out here, so this is negative 10x, this is a 9x, 9, and a negative 10, it end up being C. So same setup, negative 10 and 9. If I have a negative 10 here, and a 9 over here, I put the two numbers together. Doesn't matter how you see it, just know if I have negative 10 and I add 9 back into that, or I put 9 positive numbers back into this negative, I'm left with a negative x, okay? You guys, we had talked about the differences behind the thoughts. So just make sure you guys realize how you think and you go from there. 3 times 3 is 9. Then from there, ladies and gentlemen, this would be a 4. So do these terms line up? This and this would be negative 6x, negative 6x. They do not cancel each other out, but instead add to each other. So if I owe somebody $6 and then I owe somebody else $6, I now owe 12. I didn't pay any money back. Number 6 is A. Both of these methods are correct. This is actually the FOIL method right here. Okay, and then there's a property of power that is related to that. I just don't have it written down, and I'm not too concerned at this point. Number 7, The main focus was everything was set to 0. Okay, these all equal 0. And your roots, or your answers, or your solutions, they were what? -3, -2, 1, and 4. So if I isolate this one of x plus 10 equals 0, all of you looked at me and said, well, that's easy. It's x is -10. That's basically what you're doing here. But instead of this being a 10, you need to find the one that says x plus 3 to cancel it out. You go through this whole thing, there's only one that has x plus 3. You can verify the other numbers, but know that that's the answer. So on this one, you verify. -2, if I have a -2, -2 minus 2 is not going to cancel this out, and it's not going to cancel this one out. -2 plus 2 would cancel it out, so now you need to go and same with this one. -1 is a yes and a yes. 0 is a yes and a no. 6 would cancel this one out, but 6 works in here also, but 0 only works in B. Because remember, this equals 0. So how do you equal 0? If I put a 0 in anywhere, that's not going to cancel out the numbers, because that'd still be a 1, a 2, and a -6. But anything times a 0 is in fact a 0. All right, number 9. What method? You do multiplication, or in this case, division, reverse factoring out. Looks like they divided out of 2. If you did that, you get x squared and a 4. Nope, that's not right. So this is correct, x squared and a 4, x squared and a 4, x squared and a 4. Now we move on. Okay, next step. We'll go with this one right here. When you factor it out, if it's a square, which this is a perfect square root, okay, you get a plus and a minus. There's a plus and a minus, there's a plus and a minus, and here's a double minus. So this is not possible. So you're left with these two, and the difference is the answers. Once again, there's a little 0 here. Is there a 0 that would work in this functionality right above it? The answer is no, so the only answer is 2, okay? This one here is a no good, because 0, you plug that in, that's not really an answer to the solution, okay? This one right here, if you do is process of elimination, multiplication property of equality, means you multiply something to both sides. We didn't do that. You can't use that one. Distributive property. This is actually backwards of distributive. We actually factored this equation, so that can't be it. So now you get a 50-50 shot. 0 product and a commutative property of multiplication. Well, I know once I set it to here and I get it to 0, and it looks like it splits the equations into double zeros, it's the 0 product property. Okay, 50-50 shot, I'm dealing with a bunch of zeros, move on, get the right answer. Multiply these out. 3 times 4, negative and a negative should be positive 12. That's a no, that's a no. There's a positive 12 here. This one's completely different. They're dividing everything, both sides, by -3 here and a -3 here. So if you do that, you cancel out, this is correct. But this side, 9 divided by -3 should be -3, and it's not. So this one's gone. So that means D is the answer. We had talked about number 12 in class, that technically you want to use the quadratic formula to solve this. The problem being that some of you realize that when you solve this equation out, you don't end up with these answers unless you continue to go down and factor these out, okay? You come up with a number that's in the hundreds, I believe, then you factor it out, and it goes down a longer process. The easier way to solve this is by putting it in Desmos, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So first off, here's the equation graph, and here's my intersections, okay? So I know I'm looking for these 2 points. I go back in here and I don't see those 2 points. So now we're going to troubleshoot by plugging the answers into Desmos. But before you do that, you have to eliminate one of your options. So what I mean by that is that if you look at this first equation here, compare this one with this one. This part of the answer and this answer is the exact same thing. So you got to cross these 2 out. Okay, so that way you know that you're looking just specifically for this answer and just for this one. And the bottom 2, these last ones here. So technically now for A, I have an answer. For B and C and D, I have one answer that is unique to each equation. So now what you do is you go into Desmos and you would plug in these values. It just so happens that the first one I plug in comes up with -10.92915. You round that up, you come up to that value right there. Okay, so the answer on this one ends up being A. But that's kind of a way how you would troubleshoot and solve that one. 13, put it in decimals. Okay, when you put it in decimals, you get this answer right here. How it would look is, because this is a solid line, because you put it equals to, you would get a graph at -2 and another straight, not a graph, you get a straight line going through -2 and a straight line going through -14, and that would be your answer, okay? Part 14, number 14, part 1. So we're looking for this formula right here, x squared plus bx, okay? In relation to this problem, okay, the completing the square, we're looking for plus and then another number that we're going to add right there, okay? So in order to add the number right there, we have to, what are we doing to complete the square? If you guys remember, you take this b value and you're supposed to divide this by 2 and then you square it. So when you take the b value, divide it by 2 and square it, you add it to this side and then you would add it to the other side. That's how you complete the square. So let's take our value. Our value is actually a -1. So -1 over 2, you square it, means it's -1/2 times -1/2. That equals a positive 1 over 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. So that'd be 1/4. And then, how it works on completing the square, the value of b divided by 2, which is this number, comes down here, and it's the same number that's right here. So it's 0.5. All right, so let's work on this one. 16 or 15. Same thing. -12. You divide it by 2. You get -6. And then you would square it. So my answer is 36. My b value comes down here, and it's the letter A, because since this is -6 here, that means my value here has to be -6. 16, same thing. 2 divided by 2 is 1. You square it, that is still, ladies and gentlemen, 1. Because it's 1 times 1 equals 1. It's not adding. All right, 17, quadratic formula. A couple things about this I want to make sure you guys understand, okay? The answer here, the correct answer, is completing the square, is this one right here, because that's completing the square. That's exactly what we did, right? So this is step 4, so this is the answer. However, I want to know what the other answers are, okay? So where does square root of both sides take place? Step 6. Transfers the constant term, CA, to the right side. So we went from here to the left to the right. This would be, and then for everybody that's not in my 6th hour class, because we looked this up later, the binomial formula is actually step 7. Okay, we looked it up. We think it's step 7. It makes more sense, okay, because you're switching things over, you're adding, subtracting, doing the binomial formula. Part of me actually wants to think by putting these two together and then combining it, it's probably step 8, but I'm not too concerned with this bottom one, so just know that those are the steps. But this is 6, and that's definitely 3. And then this one would be like dividing it by A, that's what they do here. This would be square root term, and then they split the graph, and it looks like they subtract -b over 2a, and then they put the formula together. So technically, the binomial is probably formula is probably step 8, where they put everything together. This one here, graph it in decimals. It's -9, -1. Same thing, you'll get 2 vertical lines going through the points. 19, graph it. You graph it, ladies and gentlemen. I think you'll get, let me do the factoring. So if I factor this, this is my answer. Okay, but this is the factored version. Remember, this is the factor version. But to solve it, it's x equals -7 and 2. Okay, so this is factoring, this is solving. So if you do this, know that, ladies and gentlemen, the solutions are what appears on the graph. Okay, same with this one. If you graph this in decimals, okay, it would cross at 15 and it crosses at 30. All right, 21. Graph both of these based off this equation. Okay, if you do that, you'll see both of these graphs do this, which means they should open upward. Okay, instead of being weird like they are right now. 23. You could technically graph this in Desmos. Okay, and when you do, this is your equation set up right here. You have to change it to an x, and your value would be a 4 and a negative 4. So you go back in here, and your answers are E and F. Now, these two don't make sense, right? Because it should be 4s, but these are 16s. And then this value here, factor it out. Okay, so it would be, do the box method. So if you do the box method on this, 5x and 1, 5x and 1, you get 25, x squared, 5x, 5x, and a 1. So ladies and gentlemen, what is my p-value? My p-value is the number in front of the x squared, which is 25. And what is the q value? It'd be 5 plus 5, which is 10. 25 is the same way, okay? I'm going to factor this one out, so it'll be 2x squared, and then it's going to be minus 7x plus 2x minus 7. Okay, so I did the FOIL method on this one. When I set this up, my first value, p, is a 2. So I know those are gone. My last value is a negative 7. So now my answer is A. This one here, factors. Now this is the difference. Negative 2 and a 1. Okay, what two numbers multiply together to make a negative 2, but when you add them make a 1 or subtract them, it'd be 2 minus 1. So this one here, you leave as it sits. So my answers are x plus 2, x minus 1. Okay, if you were to graph this, that's one thing I want to make sure you guys understand. If you were to use Desmos and try to graph it, here's your graph and how it would look. So I get here a 1 is my solution. So this is the solution. The answer, the 0, is a 1. The factored form of this is a negative 1, x minus 1, okay? Because remember, what does x actually equal? X equals 1 and negative 2, which means if I plug this value in, it's going to be 0. So remember, this is the factor, and this is the solve. It is very important to remember the difference between the two. Factor is this way, solving, like it says right, this is solving what values are true. Solving, ladies and gentlemen, is graphing. Okay, that's the one thing you guys need to make sure you understand. 27 and 28. This one here, ladies and gentlemen, you factor out a 2, and then what's left behind? I'm just dividing everything in here by 2. There's your setup. 2, x minus 4 is 27. Factor out a 2. 16x squared minus 9. Now you take the square root of those. Now, two things in relation to this. Same setup. There's a 2. I'm a 2. I'm good. Negative 2. That's an out. 2x. That's out. So I got two choices. From here, I could graph this in Desmos. I could also grab this in Desmos and see if they compare. But what will happen is if I graph this one and this one, they'll be the exact same graph. Okay, so that's what you're shooting for. And then last, but certainly not least, 29 and 30 is what are the factored forms. So remember, factored is doing this. Okay, 1 and negative 2. So what two terms would it be? It would be you add them together. It would be, oh, my brain is taking a wild. Okay, it's negative 1 and negative 1. I'm like, wow. Answer would be D. Add those together, you get negative 2, you multiply them, you get 1. And then this one would be what two numbers multiply? Negative 5, answer's A. This is it, midterm. Okay, then we're spring break and we're done. So study up, please. If you have any questions, watch the video again, okay? Otherwise, it's been great, ladies and gentlemen, and I know everybody will do a great job on this midterm. Get some rest, please, and then if you have any questions in class before we start, please see me. We're taking it on Galileo, and you all will be very successful in it, I guarantee it. In the meantime, guys, I hope you have a great day and night, and I will see you soon.